Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about Taskmaster versus the Avengers. But before we get into that, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and be sure to leave us a comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. Prologue to this one takes place in the spring of 1980 when a distraught young man named Zeba came to the Avengers mansion asking for help. He said someone wanted to do him in, but he didn't know who or why. The rest of the Avengers were skeptical, but the Wasp seemed to believe him, even when men from the Solomon Institute arrived a short while later with a court order for Zeba's return. And when the Wasp failed to attend a scheduled meeting later in the day, the other Avengers concluded that she'd gone to investigate on her own. So the Avengers bring in Hank Pym, who's about 50 years old now, by the way. Hank puts on the yellow jacket suit and meets the Avengers at the Solomon Institute in Southampton, Long Island. By the way, the current Avengers roster consists of Ant-Man, aka Scott Lang, Beast, aka Hank McCoy, Captain America, Steve Rogers, Iron Man, Tony Stark, Joe Costa, the Gynoid, Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, Thor 2, Roger Red Norval, Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, Wonder Man, Simon Williams, and Yellow Jacket, Hank Pym. Since Scott Lang is a new recruit and he's kind of a rookie, the veteran adventurer, Hank Pym, is going to show Scott the ropes. The two men shrink down and fly in through the keyhole in the front door. From there, they enter the ventilation system, going from room to room, having a look around. The first room they come to doesn't look so much like a mental hospital as it does like a military barracks with a bunch of gun racks off to the side. Scott quips that he's never seen this much firepower in his entire life. In the next room, they find some quote unquote patients who are doing combat training. And the man who is guiding them seems more like a drill instructor than a doctor in a mental ward. In the room after that, they find a meeting room with people going over applications to this supposed mental hospital. They reject one for having an IQ that's too high, and another for being reluctant to follow orders. The last one says that they'd better find some new recruits soon, or they'll never be able to supply Dr. Octopus with the henchmen he ordered. So Hank Pym says what we all know now, that the Solomon Institute is just a front. And in all actuality, this is where the supervillains have been getting their seemingly endless supply of nameless goons from. The heroes meet an ant in the vent and communicate with it using their helmet gadgets. And the ant, in turn, takes them to where the wasp is being held. She's on an operating table and has her head in this glass box, exposing her to gas that keeps her knocked down. Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket drop in and grow to regular size, then fight the guards in the room, knocking them out. Then take that glass box thing off of Wasp's head, and she wakes up. Hank asks if she's okay, and she says that she is, but she's getting too old for this. Hank says he knows the feeling. But more guards pour in, and hold the heroes at gunpoint. They then take them to a man who looks like an older version of Zeba. This man explains that he's ill and that Zeba is his clone. He's going to take from the clone what he needs, whether the clone likes it or not, which makes Wasp mad, so she attacks. Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket also attack. But before they even know what's happened, they're all knocked out. Which brings us to the main plot. Ant-Man, Wasp, and Yellow Jacket are tied up. And when they wake up, they see a strange man in a blue, orange, and white costume wearing a skull mask. Wasp asks just who or what he is, and he introduces himself as the Taskmaster. He says he spent a lot of time and energy setting up facilities like this one, and he doesn't like the Avengers nosing around. As a demonstration of what he can do, he has some of his rent-a-thugs attack him, and they do. Then Taskmaster throws his shield at him as hard as Captain America can. He uses clubs like Daredevil. He has Hawkeye's archery abilities and Spider-Man's gymnastics. After the thugs are knocked out, Taskmaster says he knew that one day he'd be fighting the good guys, so he watched every news broadcast he could about them, watched how they moved, and using something that he refers to as photographic reflexes, which he likens to photographic memory, he can then perform any physical skill that they can. Anyways, so Taskmaster then turns his attention to the sick old man who had himself cloned. Taskmaster says it's his fault the Avengers are here. And the old man is so scared of Taskmaster, his heart gives out and he collapses on the floor as Taskmaster watches. Taskmaster gives the old man's job to the clone and says, "Now you're Dr. Solomon." Zeba was a nickname the original Dr. Solomon came up with, and it's German for same. Just then, the other Avengers bust through the wall and attack. Captain America is calling the shots, and he throws his shield at Taskmaster, while Beast, Iron Man, Jocasta, Ms. Marvel, Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Thor 2, and Wonder Man attack Taskmaster's army of henchmen. When Thor 2 throws his hammer at one of the thugs, Taskmaster watches him do it, which means Taskmaster's fighting ability is suddenly drastically increased. And it's all because Red had peak human agility before he got the hammer. And the hammer increases your fighting ability by 9 column shifts, plus 1 extra column shift for the hammer itself. So now Taskmaster has the martial artist and weaponry skills both in the 36 to 40 AP range, and his weaponry skill with the hammer specifically is in the 41 to 45 AP range. If he can get his hands on that hammer, and now he wants it. So on Taskmaster's turn, he subs that new martial arts skill of his for how much damage he can do, and he tries to hit Thor 2. Since they both have a dexterity of 16, he needs an 11 or better to hit. He rolls a 9 and a 4, which earns him 1 extra column shift of damage. So it's his 36 APs versus Red's body of 24, plus Red's skin armor of 5. That means that Red takes 17 points of damage, and now he has a body of 7. Taskmaster can't attack again because he had to move to the spot on the map where Red was standing. So that is the end of Taskmaster's turn. And everybody in this room now sees what a massive problem Taskmaster is. So Iron Man, who has some of the best stats of all the Avengers, attacks Taskmaster with repulsor blasts, but he rolls a 1 and an 8, which isn't high enough to hit Taskmaster's new super dexterity. Ms. Marvel tries to hit him. She rolls an 8 and a 7, which is a miss. On Thor 2's turn, he tries to hit Taskmaster. He rolls a 10 and an 8, which earns 3 column shifts. He also uses an ability called Unfettered Might, which pushes the hammer's damage into the 28 to 30 AP range, which does 28 points of damage. So Taskmaster, thankfully, is knocked out. And that was a close one, because if Red had not made that roll, Taskmaster would have easily been able to slaughter all the Avengers. After that, the Avengers knock out the Rena-Thugs with ease. Ant-Man, Wasp, and Yellowjacket are freed from the weird manacles that they were in, and Iron Man says they have a huge problem on their hands. When Taskmaster wakes up, he has such a high martial arts skill that he could just break out of any prison they put him in. So the Avengers argue about what to do. Captain America doesn't want to execute Taskmaster. Red suggests that they have Scarlet Witch use her probability control to see what the chances are that Taskmaster develops amnesia. But Cap says that sounds an awful lot like lobotomizing one's foes, which the Avengers shouldn't be doing. Ant-Man suggests putting Taskmaster in that thing they found Wasp in earlier, with a glass box over his head that keeps him from waking up. And while Cap doesn't like that as a long-term solution, he agrees to do it for now until a better solution can be found. And that brings us to our epilogue. Taskmaster finally wakes up. The glass box is on his head, and the tank that provided the knockout gas has finally ran dry. So Taskmaster sits up and looks around, and he sees 2 moons. What the hell? He says to himself as he gets to his feet. He finds that he's on an alien planet somewhere, and there are a ton of fruit trees here. At first, he doesn't know if he can eat the fruit or not. He actually manages to last a few days without eating, but eventually he gets hungry enough that he decides to try it, and it doesn't kill him. He looks around, and while he does find some animals that he kills and eats, they're all herbivores. In fact, he's here for a long, long time, and he never once encounters a life form other than himself that eats meat. Taskmaster uses that martial arts skill of 40 APs to literally kick down trees, which he uses to build himself a log cabin. He grows a beard and slowly plots his revenge. And eventually, he does return to Earth. But that's a story for another day. Before I was the game master, my best friend Jay was GM, and Taskmaster was one of his favorite villains of all time. So I thought this adventure was cool because it showed what a massive threat he could be. Few, if any, Avengers can live through getting hit by a 40 AP attack. So we came very close in this one to a total party kill. But I'm really glad the good guys won. Hopefully you enjoyed this one too. If so, as always, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope that all of you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.